All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of video presentations based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. And right now, I have gone through the getting started with the web and the HTML structuring the web, which brings me into the learning to style using CSS. And I'm on the CSS first steps, which is the first part right here. And I've gone through the overview and what is CSS. So now we're into the getting started with CSS. So as it says, we will take a simple HTML document and apply CSS to it, learning some practical things about the language along the way. All right. So it says our starting point is an HTML document. You can copy the code below and save it as index.html on your machine. So let's do that. Don't need this anymore. No, it doesn't really matter one way or the other. But let's come in here and do this. All right, so I'm going to save this. They say to save it as index.html. It looks like we can. So index.html, and you can see it put some color into it. And if I go out now and actually run this, right now it doesn't look like much. Okay, now I've blown it up to 300% just so you can see everything that's on here. All right, normally at 100% it would look like this. So it's kind of hard to see. So again, I'm just blowing it up for the visual representation of it. All right. It says if you are reading this device on an environment where you can't easily, don't worry about it. So adding CSS. The first thing we need to do is to tell the document that we have some CSS rules we want to use. There's 3 different ways of doing this, just like there were 3 different ways. Well, just like you'll see in a couple minutes or a little later, that there are a bunch of different, there are about 3 different ways of putting in JavaScript as well. Now, what we can do is we can create an external file, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to create an external file, and all we'll put in it is this. So we'll create another file here, and we'll put that in there. And I'm going to save this as styles.css. And when we do that, okay, fine. So we've got that file, but it didn't do anything to our actual program file here. Doesn't look any different. That's because it's not aware that that file exists. So we come into our head section. You can put it anywhere in the head section, but you put in link rel for relationship equals style sheet, and href equals, now normally you'd put it into a CSS folder. We're not doing that here. We're just going to put styles.css and end our tag. So the link is another one of these empty tags. Again, you'll oftentimes see it rather than that like this, and either way will work just fine. If this worked, then the H1, any H1s that we have in here should be red. Well, there's the H1, and I believe that's the only one we have. So let's go back and look at this and see if it looks, if this now becomes red. And you'll notice, boom, it did. All right. So nothing big here. This is all stuff we've talked about before. Now, they say that you can either work with styles or you can work with their interactive editor that they have here. I'm not going to do that. All right. So I'm just going to come down here, and this says I want all of our paragraphs to have a text color of green. So we will come back in here. We will add this. Now you can space this out any way you want. I used to always do mine like this and like this. I don't anymore. You very rarely see that. It's usually set up like this. You might have a space there, etc. Whatever way you do it, just be consistent. I do like to put a blank space here in between each line. I think it just makes it a little easier to read. So now if this worked, now the paragraphs that we have in here, those should now be green. So let's check. And indeed, you can see these are green. Now you'll notice the link didn't turn that color. Links are going to be handled a little bit differently, and you'll see that in just a few minutes. Now it says here, if we want both our paragraphs and our list items to be green, we can just add this in here. So in other words, we can come back into here, come on, and after this, we can put in comma li. What changed? Again, always, as always, easier to show you. Let's see if these now turn green. And they have. Okay? All right. Changing the default behavior of elements. It says when we look at a well marked up HTML document, we can see that the browser is making the HTML readable by adding some default styling. Well, what if you don't want any of that? I will tell you, I'm going to do something that probably is going to be shown later, but I'm just going to put it in here now. All right? And I'm going to do this. This is what I'm showing you right now. This is not in this, at least so far, in what we're looking at, but I wanted to show it to you. What I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to turn off any default styling that's in here. So I'm going to put in the asterisk, which is the universal selector, and I'm going to say margin 0, padding 0, which means that I want you to remove any margin you might have and any padding that you might have. Now, it won't work until I put in that ending curly. And again, as always, easiest to show you this by going back to our run here. All right, and notice when okay, you see that? There's no margin in here now, and there's no padding in here. We've got rid of the default margin and the default padding. Okay, now we can go add it back, or we could come in and say, hey, by default, we want all of our margin in here, let's just say to be 1 rem, and all of our padding in here to be 1 rem. All right, and you'll again notice how markedly different it looks once I do that. See that? Now that's at 300%. At 100%, it doesn't look nearly as bad, but we started spacing it out. All right. All right, I have to pause for just a second. All right, so I'm going to make this bigger as it was, but I'm going to remove some of that margin and padding because that was putting basically 16 pixels of padding on top, bottom, left, and right, and the same with margin. All right, so I'll tell you what, let's try to leave just so you can start to see the difference between the two. Why don't we come in here and why don't we remove the margin? We'll just set this to margin 0. Okay, so there'll be no margin. Just so you can start to see. Now notice, this is everything here. All right, and boom. And it changed quite a bit. Okay, so this is all padding that's in here right now. Again, if I were to remove the padding, okay, it would all be pushed up in the upper left-hand corner as you saw it before. I'm not going to do that, but I will set it down here to 0.5 rem or 0.5 rem. So I'm going to cut it down to half of what it was previously. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so the next thing that we're told to do here is we want to set the list style type to none. And if this works, which it should, what you're going to notice then is these dots here, 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 and here are going to go away. Okay? All right. Now you might look at this and say, well, couldn't we have said list style type none? Well, paragraphs don't have a list style type, so it really doesn't make sense. So what we've got so far is this is our universal selector, and we're telling it to add no margin and add 0.5 rem of padding all the way around on our document. We're telling it that every H1 tag should be red in color. The paragraphs and the list items should all be green in color, And the list items should not have these periods, all right, before them. So again, I'm saving, coming back. These again should be gone as soon as I refresh. And they are. Now there's other things that you can set those to. Just so you're aware of this, I just want you to see this. I'll reset it to none in just a minute. But before I do, you can set it to circle. You say, well, that's what it was originally. No, originally it was actually set to what's called disc, D-I-S-C. How do I know that? Well, there's the circles. See how they're not filled in? All right, if I do it again and change it to disc, that'll be the way that it looked originally. See that? The other one that you can put in there that is built in, so to speak, is a square. And that is a colored in square. There you go. Now, you could also go in and, let's see, set list style type to let's just say set list. Let's see what we get in here. All right. I'm looking at W3 schools to see if they have anything special in here. No, that's for unordered and ordered list. Circle and square, yeah. All right. Let's see. Disc, circle, square. And what it's looking for is you can put in your own in here also. And I don't remember how to do that, so. Let's see, list style property. There, you do something like this. All right, so let's do this. Now this isn't going to work. We don't have any sqpurple.gif, but at least it's given me the right syntax to use in this. All right, so I don't want to say this. URL. Let's see if we can find a very small little, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say on images.google.com and I'm going to put in here a star. All right, and this looks like it'll work, something small like this golden star. So I'm going to save the image as, this might be really big, I have absolutely no idea, but I'll throw it onto the desktop and I'm just going to put in here star, so it'll be star.jpg. Okay, so in other words, it looks like this right there. Like I said, this might look very big, but I don't really care. It's totally fine. We're going to remove it in a minute. So star.jpg. And what I'm trying to show you here is how you could put in your own thing in there other than just the circle, the square, or the disc. So let's see if that worked. And it did not. It is a JPG and it is called star. Well, I must have put something in there syntactically incorrect. This is the one they had. So it has to be list style image. Maybe I don't have that. And I don't. I have type instead of image. All right, let's try that. And, well, they're there. They're just so big, these stars, that they're being pushed over. So let's go back and we'll add a little bit more margin, just so that you can see indeed that it did work. So let's put in here margin 1 rem as we had before, and we'll remove the padding now. Hopefully that'll fix it so you'll be able to at least see it. And there they are. Okay, so that's a lot bigger than you typically would make it, but hopefully you get the idea. If I push this out to 2 rem, it should be totally visible then. There you go. So that's putting our own thing in there with that list style image. All right. All right, I'm at 16 minutes, so let's see where I am in here. All right, we're about to come in and add a class. This seems like a good place to break. Everything that we've done thus far, just mention this, that everything we've done thus far that we put in here has been a selector of an element. So these are all H1s, all paragraphs, all list items, all list items. But what if we want something to basically be for not every paragraph, but what if we want just the first paragraph, let's say, that we have in here, this first paragraph. What if we want just this first paragraph and just that one? All right, we want it to be, let's just say for whatever reason we want it to be in uppercase. Well, I'm going to show you the wrong way of doing it, and we'll start with that in just a couple minutes.